We have an official timekeeper here. And the rules are, for introductions, you get 3 minutes, and then you get 3 minutes for each of the questions and 2 minutes for closing comments, assuming that we stay on our schedule. I think we should do that if only 3 out of the 4 are here. Anyway, the first question involves copper nickel mining in northern Minnesota, and the question is written there, so I'm not going to repeat it verbally. But the question is, if a vote to allow drilling came to the floor, what would be your position? John?
Do you want us to do...
Oh, I'm sorry, you need introductions first. My mistake. My mistake. Introductions first.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me here tonight and filling me up with this great food. And I appreciate all of you that drive along. Of course, I realize it's going to make it tougher for all of us to stay awake, but we'll do our best, right? But again, thank you for this time to get together and explore the issues that are at least interesting to you and to the rest of us. My name is John Petersburg, and I am running for Minnesota House of Representatives in 24A, which is Owatonna, Izaak, and the townships in between. I was raised on a farm in Claremont, and I have actually owned a farm as well, and I still do own that particular farm. But the last 15 years, I've been church administrator at Trinity Lutheran Church here in Owatonna. And that has given me a lot of experience, and it has given me a lot of opportunities to learn and grow in what I think is important for being a legislator. One of the things that I think is the most important reason why I'm running for the office is because I've been a lifelong member in this particular area. It has been very good to me. It has provided me support during tough times, and it has been valuable to me as well. So that's 3 minutes.
That's your minute. No, it was a minute for the. Oh,
No,
I'm
it's 3
sorry.
minutes.
Please go on.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I saw 1 minute on here. I'm new at this.
I was going to say I was long-winded.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Don't worry.
This is my opportunity to share and give back to this district. It's an opportunity for me to serve this district at the St. Paul. I believe I have had the experiences that will do very well up at the Capitol, and I believe I can bring something to the Capitol that will be beneficial. As you know, I've worked in a large congregation, a large church, and there is a certain amount of politics in the church, believe it or not. And somebody asked me why I'm running for the Minnesota House and all the politics up there, and I said, well, you know, after working in the church, it might be easier. Because there are, with the church, you got to understand is that we all are in the pews together, we all worship together, and yet we do have conflicts. We do have differences of opinions. And it's important for us to be able to bring those opinions together, for us to be able to be tolerant of each other's opinions, but yet at the end of the day, be able to look at each other and say, you know, we're on the right path, we're together in this, and let's continue on doing it. So those are some of the reasons why I'm running for the office, why I think I'm skilled and talented and can deal with the issues up at the state legislature, and we hope that you also think that as well at the end of the night. I'll pass it over.
Okay, thank you. I also am very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Vicki Jensen. I'm a wife and a mother of 3. Miranda is a senior at Winona State University. She's studying biology, and she really wants to be there's a river. She wants to study the rivers, and so I'm very excited for her to do that and continue that. Ryan is a freshman at Rochester Technical College, and Benjamin is in 3rd grade. My husband, Trevor, and I, who's with me tonight, own an independent insurance agency in Owatonna. The reason that I'm running for state senate is because I've been working for the past 10 years on policy issues that affect the people in this area, and I want to continue that work at the state. One of the things that I've been doing is I'm on the Owatonna School Board, and I do that because I value education, and I think we must find lifelong learning opportunities. I am Secretary-Treasurer of Steele County Farmers Union, and the reason that I do that is because I believe we have to protect the family farm just to maintain the viability of our communities. I was on the board of directors and the policy chair at the chamber because as a business owner, I do feel that it's important for everyone to take an active role in shaping the policy that affect us here. I would like to share a little bit about my background as far as ag. My dad was a were married, we had to make a decision if we could continue to farm or not, because there just wasn't enough land for 3 families. He had an older brother who was 10 years older than him, and he had already gotten involved with farming. So we had to decide what we were going to do, and Trevor had started in the insurance industry, and I believe that we have to look out for all the things agriculturally too. So, thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Greg Brendan. I live in Waseca, where I'm an educator in the Waseca Public Schools. My wife and I lived there for the past 7 years. We have a son, Jacob, who is currently serving with the Marine Corps in Japan at this moment, and a daughter, Kirsten, who will be graduating from high school this coming spring, and we're kind of excited about that because we'll be empty nesters. We're kind of looking forward to that idea. I'm a farm boy from West Central Minnesota, in the Fergus Falls area. Grew up and learned about conservation from my parents and my grandparents. I believe in conservation of the land, safeguarding the land, safeguarding the things that we hold dear to make sure that we can provide for the future agriculturally and maintain things for future generations, so we don't lose those opportunities. I'm a 30-year veteran of the National Guard, having served our state and nation for 30 years. Recently retired 2 years ago, served a tour of duty in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And those years, those 30 years really helped shape my life in making decisions, and policy decisions, and looking at planning. How do we plan for the future? How do we plan for an objective, something we're going to accomplish? And we looked at that, and we understood that by bringing in our best minds and best idea creators, we can solve the problems and reach our objectives by using all the resources that we have. And I've always done it that way in every aspect of my life. The reason I got back involved into politics is that something was missing in my life, and that was the service part of it. Giving something back to the communities that have given things to you, and the state that's given things to you, and provide you with things is an important aspect of what we have going on, particularly here in Minnesota. Minnesota's known for that, giving back. It's people giving back to each other, helping each other out. And that's why I want to be part of the legislative process, because I have that broad-based look at things that I want to get out there and say, hey, what can we do together to make things work? Build from our foundation and ensure our future by making good plans that have long-range goals for us down the road, not any short fixes for us.
Okay, thank you. Since I've already introduced the first question, we'll let Vicki start with her answer to, if a vote to allow drilling came to the floor, what would be your position?
Well, the way that I look at policy is you always have to take a look at what is it intending to do? Is it going to do that? Do we want it to do that? And how can we make it better? And that's how I look at all policy. So I would absolutely have to see the full policy when it came to the floor in order to make a decision. With that said, I think and understand that we have to find some common ground between the economy, jobs in that area are critical to that area, and we understand that across the state. In the environment, we all want to protect, we all need to protect the environment. And then the quality of life concerns that come about because of that. And anytime I read something that says this process is highly toxic and it can cause harm to animals, plants, and plant life, that's very alarming to me. And the only way I think that we can find some of that common ground and make that happen is if we keep in place some of the standards that we already currently have, and then add some stricter oversight into it. I know we can find some efficiencies as far as how we do processing of environmental issues, but we can't lose sight of what the effect could be on our water supply. One thing about water, it's not contained within a border, and it can come from other areas. So one thing that I would like to see is that there would be some federal oversight on this, because there are other waters that are coming into Minnesota as well. So I think there should be some federal oversight into it, and maybe some prove it first legislation. I know Wisconsin has some prove it first legislation, and I think
concerned about our environment, protecting the things. We have issues dealing with resources, natural resources. The tourism industry up there are all factors that come into play. At the same time, the economic depression that's been up in that area for the past number of years is also something we have to look at. Where do we find a balance? We have to be able to find a balance. We have to be able to protect the resources that we have by looking at are the rules, the laws, the policies that we have in place now, are they strong enough to protect what we have right now? Are they looking into the future? Where will we be down the future? We know that our businesses now are being held to higher standards. They have to make sure that they meet the needs, meet the requirements, but also being sure that they are held to that, and then see that they're working to improve upon what they're doing should they be allowed into an area where our natural resources are being looked at to develop opportunities. It's hard to look at when you look at quality of life for families in that area, the quality of life of the quality of natural resources, preserving that. The fine balance that has to be struck in order to maintain livable conditions for our families in that neighborhood, and maintaining what we hold dear as our natural resources for our children, our grandchildren, the future generations of Minnesota. Because once we lose them, they are gone forever. If you've ever been up in the Hibbing and Chisholm area and seen the iron mines up there and how it works, there's a lot of times it's very desolate when they're gone through there. And I've been up there a number of times and seen that. So looking at how do we preserve the natural resources that we have so that our future generations can have the ability to enjoy the things that we enjoy, but yet maintain that economic advantage for our people that are living in that area so they can provide lives for their families and their children going into the future. Looking at that fine balance and sitting down and talking with the people, making sure we develop processes that will ensure safeguards for all areas and across the board.
To answer the question the way it was written, and with the information that is written, I would vote against it. Because if it's not, there are no safeguards that can prove effective, obviously we can't. But beyond that, if you delve mostly and more into what the question is really intended to ask is what kind of bill would come forward, what kind of safeguards are in place, what other options are there, I would certainly have to read that first as well. There is an old saying that says it's much easier to prevent something than it is to deal with it afterwards. And I believe that's true with all of our environmental issues that we've had. I farmed for a long time, and my dad did too. And we used to do some no-till stuff that was very, very new. Drilling beans after Roundup, when Roundup first came out, for those of you that remember the first years that Roundup came out. And there are many opportunities that we can do. We can do a lot of things that will help without necessarily having the government involved and without having to have Big Brother kind of watching over us. But here we're talking about somebody that needs to get a permit in order to do the drilling, and somebody that needs to prove that it can deal with those issues. And until that is proven, I think it's better for us to say, not yet. The economy of that particular area is very depressed, and yes, along with the other two, that is a factor. But are we saying that, hey, the only way that the economy can turn around is with mining? I don't necessarily buy that. I think there are other opportunities for them to participate and grow in the economy as well. So again, bottom line is, until we see the actual legislation that comes forward, I can't give you a definite answer, but if it came just the way it was listed in the statement here, I would be voting against it.
Thank you. Question 2 deals with invasive species, such as zebra mussels, milfoil, and buckthorn. The question is, what measures would you support as a legislator to prevent the spread of invasive species in Minnesota? I think, Craig, you're up this time.
Well, right preventing Eurasian milfoil, zebra mussels coming in by cleaning your boats. Outdoorsmen, you generally do a pretty good job of maintaining their equipment, making sure that it's clean so that they don't transport things. But not everybody does that. Not everybody does it. With the advent of water sports and things like that, those don't always get checked. They're coming in and out of our bodies of water. Will we need enforcement? Yes. I think we'll need enforcement. Is there a cost to that? Yes, there is, but I don't know. I don't believe the state can uphold that cost. Maybe what we need to look at is volunteers that are willing to spend time. But there again, that's a burden that we place on the people that we have. Passing legislation to have enough people out there enforcing it is a huge cost to us. Can we afford that? I look at it, I don't know that we can right now where our state's economic areas are. But we need our groups that are willing to go. I believe groups are willing to go out and be part of the enforcement process on a volunteer basis. I do believe can be a good head start into working to prevent the spread of invasive species across the state. And being like going out and removing those areas with buckthorn and things like that where they are coming into our areas, making sure that they're cleaned up and ready to go for us. But it requires volunteers is where I look at it. And that's the hard part, finding the volunteers. It's educating, I believe our future with that is educating our young people. The appreciation for our natural resources, getting them away from their iPods and their computers and saying, hey, this is where our background is, this is what we are in Minnesota, giving that education to the young people so they become involved in the process of being a part of working with our natural resources, preserving them for their future and their children's future.
Thank you. One of the things that we have to always strive for is to first not make it worse. And I can remember back when the Asian beetles were, ladybugs for those of us who know, were introduced in the United States because it was going to ward off some of the bugs and stuff that were on soybeans and others. Pretty soon that became a bigger problem than what the original one was. And we've done that a couple of different times, thinking that we as humans have a better understanding of what's going on than nature itself, and we introduce things that we think are going to be better. So one of the things I think, if you're going to do anything concerning the Asian carpet and emerald ash borer, is first of all, I think it's best to be a little bit slow and understand exactly what's happening and how it spreads and how it may grow, because the reality is you aren't going to ever be able to stop it dead in its tracks. Animals itself are going to be moving various aspects of most diseases. Even milfoil can be moved by animals, not necessarily by people. So we are kind of losing a losing game here at times. But yet at the same time, we need to first do no harm. We need to not jump to conclusions until we know exactly what's going on. I don't know that I have any legislation to keep them at bay at this time, other than to really ask people to be accountable for their actions, understand what's going on, and where we really can probably do the best is in educating people about some of the dangers of these species and how they impact us. So I'm sorry I don't have a clear-cut answer to that because there's no legislation yet to deal with it.
Okay. I think it's pretty clear and apparent in the state of Minnesota that there are a lot of people that want clean water. Our land, well, when we passed the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment, it was clear that people are aware of the problem. What I would be in support of and what I would work for is I think we need to clear up and free up some of the money from that and put it towards some things, specific things like watercraft inspectors and clean water specialists, some of those things, because what it feels like happening, instead of being a state, local government, local organization partnership, the more local organizations get involved and put their money in, and the more local governments put it in, the more the state steps back. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to take the opposite approach. That money has been, and we'll talk about it later too, but the way that they're dividing some of those funds, like the park and trails, Greater Minnesota is getting a smaller amount. I think the division is 40, 40, 14 it was the first year. I think it needs to be a 1/3 split between the state, the DNR, and outstate in the metro area. If we can get at least a 1/3 split, we can take some of that money and apply it to some of these things that are going to, in the long run, threaten some of the things that are our heritage, our culture. It's not just about the economy, it's about who we are as Minnesotans. And like I said, we voted for that act because we believe in that and we want to maintain that. So I think it's in good faith that a legislator would take a look at some of those things.
Thank you. Third question involves floodwater management. And basically, the statement says that the city of Owatonna has made some changes in the way they operate, but the county has not really followed suit in taking measures to prevent floodwater damage. The question is, what legislative measures would you support or introduce to encourage establishment of areas such as wetlands, marshes, and other things that filter stormwater? John, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I think this one really ties in very heavily with the last question as well. And I believe where it really can boil down to is the legacy amendment. And if you remember, and I'm sure you do, but just for recap, it's 3/8% sales tax that was designed for both and mostly for environmental issues and also for the arts. And it was broken down so that 1/3 of the dollars would go to the Lesser Sam's Foundation, as well as 1/3 of it goes for clean water and the rest for many other smaller details, including the arts. And one of those, the clean water, I think, is where we really can utilize some of those funds for supporting measures that would help with buffer zones and wet marshes and those around streams and creeks and rivers in order to stop and slow down some of that water. It has been an ongoing problem of drainage for years and years, that those at the bottom always get the water faster and more impactful, and those at the top of whatever watershed it is always get the benefit. And the reality is that we've increased the water speed and the amount of time that water takes to leave the surface, and now it's going directly into streams, it's going directly into rivers and lakes, and sometimes it takes along with it topsoil, it takes along chemicals that are there as well. So I think it's a key example of where we could use clean water dollars that are part of the legacy to help support that. And I think it's one of the ways in which we're not diverting the intent of that legislation and that amendment, because it is used for exactly where it would be. So that's one area in which we can do that. We can also look at counties and state properties that maybe could be enticed to be more and better stewards of areas around lakes and rivers, because we all have a responsibility for that. It's true that farmers who are along there would like to grow crops and make some money. That's what we're all about. But long term, farmers are also one of those that really understand the environment. They really understand conservation. They're not interested in washing their topsoil down the road as well. The federal government has already started that process in the 50-foot buffer along most of the creeks and streams, and I think that's a good start that we can also supplement. So I think those are some of the options.
I agree that agriculture plays a big part in this, and that is something that needs more cooperation. I think everyone is doing a really good job to try to promote and understand what we can do for the conservation. But as far as the water goes, I would be interested in finding some legislation that would promote more understanding of exactly, and get some of these groups working together better. I know when I went out to the soil and water conservation tour that they had in Steele County, which was a see some of the wonderful things that are going on with conservation. But I listened to somebody from Soil and Water Conservation talk about the differences between what they felt would conserve some of the soil and what township managers had been hearing from the DNR. And it was completely different. So there's some things that should be done to get so that the scientific methods that we're using and that we're learning about could be across more of the organizations. I would work hand in hand with organizations like the Izaak Walton League to try to promote and bring some of those things together so that we can protect people that are dealing with floodwater and stormwater. So I know there are things that we can do legislatively, CRP, some of the RIM programs that are done currently, I think could be beefed up. And I know they've been trying to do that. And when you're trying to find funds to do that, it's always a difficult struggle. But if we can do this and try to do this together, I think we can find solutions.
Well, first, when you look at what the city of Owatonna has done with the pervious alleys and things of that nature, and driveways to help filter the water so it doesn't run off into our streets, that's a major factor. Looking at when we do new projects going in is to expand that option, the catch basins in our communities, prohibiting the direct discharge of water into the streets, because that water runs directly into our rivers and streams. Making sure that we adhere to those policies that are set up so we can preserve that water, so we have the opportunity to filter it before it even enters on the city side. When we start looking on the agricultural area, growing up on a farm and learning what I did from my father and grandfathers, was that stewardship of the land is the number one issue. I grew up near the Red River Valley. I watched the floods up there in '97. It's not a pretty sight. When you see water flowing down the ditches that's going as fast as you are driving down the highway, there's something wrong. When land has been ditched and drained for many miles, and it comes from 30 to 40 miles away in the spring of the year. Some of this land, and I'm not, I don't begrudge the farmers for what we've done, because I grew up doing it. I grew up farming. But some of this land should have never been under the plow. The land was designed before we came, the land held the water back. The land has that capability. When we ditch it, when we drain it, we lose that opportunity to withhold that water back in a fashion where it drains naturally. We can slow it down. We can have those buffer strips to keep the filters in there for when the rainwater comes off. But we have to look at the realization that when we drain, when we ditch our land, it has to go down someplace. And the guy, like Vern said, the guy downstream is the one that takes the hit. And people upstream, they reap all the benefits from it. And I've seen that because I've lived downstream, and it's no fun. So by looking at withholding, creating a wetland, so that land that was designed to hold that water back and keep it there until it drains naturally is a huge issue for our safeguarding our water for the future. It was designed to do that way many, 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 many years ago, and we need to keep that focused in that direction so that we can have those resources for the future.
Thank you. The final question deals with sales tax monies and use of the LASAR funds and the clean water funding. Several of you have already mentioned this as a precursor to the question, and I would like to announce, some of you may have read this on the minutes that are in front of you. I received word yesterday as I was making those minutes that our purchase of approximately 45 acres of land to be added to the Somerset Wildlife Management Area will take place on Monday. So finally, it will be off our agenda. It's been there for 4 years. So this is fair warning, Mr. Spindler, I need a check for $10,000. That's our contribution. It's designated money rebates of 1% from their taxes and also from all their gambling monies from the lotteries. Anyway, it seems that legislators and legislative committees are trying to raise some of the funds in the clean water and the LaSarge monies. Here's the question. How would you safeguard the intentions of the people of Minnesota that the clean water and LaSarge funds be used exclusively for legitimate environmental projects? And I think Vicki, you're up on
Go
this.
first. Well, the rating of funds needs to stop. Easier said than done. Anytime you have any money that's sitting there available for something, and people go after it, and it's understandable because people are always looking for funds. But they did do a really good thing with that amendment when they wrote in there that it was not to be substituted. It has to be for, in addition to other pieces of legislation, and you can't substitute and get rid of other legislation that's currently there and use it for that purpose. So I think that was a good thing. But like I said, some of the things that concern me are the distribution of some of the funds. It has four parts to it. And I'm concerned about Greater Minnesota not getting some availability to some of those funds. How would I make sure that the projects that they're working on are legitimate? I would absolutely include, like I said, work with organizations like the Izaak Walton League, and do my homework. And this is something that I have done in a lot of the policy issues that I've been working on. They need to be scientifically sound, so it needs to be based on good science, and it needs to be something that people can understand, and I think that the amendment was set up pretty well, and it allows outside people to go in and present projects. I would carry those projects, but like I said, I would have to have input from organizations like yourself, local governments, to try to make those things work.
And I agree with Vicki. We apply a constitutional amendment that says these funds are designated for these specific ideas. We need to hold ourselves to that ideal. Maintain those funds for the intention that the people of Minnesota said, this is important to us. This is what we believe in, is a legacy of our state, hence the title, the Legacy Amendment. It is what we are, who we are, and we need to preserve that going forward. Now, everybody wants a piece of the pie. We need to make sure we have people that are having good oversight, so when the requests come in, do they fit the ideals of the amendment? How will they fit inside that scope? We need to keep those funds where they're intended, because that's what the people of the state of Minnesota said. 33% of that fund goes for clean water, prairies, restoration, forests, wetlands, and habitat for wildlife. Things that we all partake in every day that we're here. Maintaining those things, not only for us, but for the future. And 14.25% of that goes to maintaining parks and trails in our areas, regionally here and across the state, making sure that those things are sound, safe for our people and our visitors that come to our state to partake in and be part of and enjoy the things that we have here in Minnesota. So ensuring that those monies are there for their intended purposes is my main goal with overlooking the Legacy Amendment, making sure that they're there to maintain the ideals that we hold to keep safe and sound for all of us.
I think the key in the descriptor here is that they tried, and they tried and not succeeded because of how it was written in the amendment and how it's been set up. If I understand the use of the 1/3 of that tax, the Outdoor Heritage Fund makes recommendations currently to the legislature, and they follow them in most there will always be individuals that will try, through legislation or others, to divert dollars from any project out there. But this particular one is set by Constitution, and until either the Supreme Court changes that Constitution or there's another amendment to change it, it is the rules that we go by. So unless somebody is a lot more creative than I have any ideas about, I believe it's safe. And so I offer that as hope out there, to know that it is safe at this time. But to safeguard that even further is that you elect people that have the will and the persistence in order to always stay true to whatever you have set up as part of the Constitution, that you are concerned about the commitments that have been made and what this state has made through its Constitution and what the voters have done. So to me, that's a very simple one. It's one of the easier questions, is that we continue doing what we do, and we have people that are elected there that are credible and maintain what we've already committed to.
Thank you. The questions have been answered, and we are now into the summary phase. You each have approximately 2 minutes for closing comments. And Craig, you're first.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank you for having us here this evening. Conservation has been an issue for me my entire life, growing up on the farm, learning those aspects of what it is and make things better for us. We have to look towards the future. Conservation of our natural resources is not something that happens tomorrow for us. It's something we have to be planning for the future, because we've seen what happens when we ignore it. It deteriorates very, very quickly. We need to be developing long-term plans. We need to have long-term goals. And within those long-term goals, looking down the road, we have to have little benchmarks that we can reach to provide areas how we can refine and work to make it better as we go forward. To say that we're just going to go out there and do it is one thing, but to make sure we have a step plan to get there is another. That's how we make sure that the goals that we look at are going to be realized in the future. I've developed ideas of planning that way through my experience in the military and in school, by looking at a broad base of the ideas that are out there, looking at our goal that we have, working to reach, and then setting up those benchmarks on how we're going to get there. And I've done that for the past 30 years, been working in those aspects along those lines, and I have that experience to be able to do that. And the willingness to listen to people that say, here's the ideas that we have, here's the things that we're concerned about, let's take them, set them down, look at them all, and hammer out something that's going to be working for us across the board, for everybody in our state, to make sure we have things that are moving us forward. Thank you.
My wife Susan, who is sitting over there, and I are fairly newlyweds. We've been married a few years, and she comes from the bigger city, but she's always been interested in outdoors and loves the arboretum up there that she used to volunteer with till I brought her down here to the sticks right here. But I've lived here in this area for a long time, and I also enjoy the land and what's going on here. We're not really interested in seeing our natural resources disintegrate because of poor management, because of sloppy accountability, etc. I know that you sitting out there, whoever is elected as your representative, you have a great deal of responsibility in keeping us informed of what's going on. You will be our workforce out here, keeping us informed of what's going on. At the legislature, there is a lot of stuff to do up there, and we can't be experts in everything. So we will be looking at experts like you to keep us informed. It's one of the real talents I think that I have, is being able to delegate and ask for help from other people, being able to bring people together and look at what we can do together to solve the problems, so that all of us at the end of the day can leave the meeting or leave the room or leave the area believing and knowing that we did the best we could live with it. It may not necessarily be everything we wanted, but we know we did the best that we can. So I ask you just to think about that, and I also pillars of the air, soil, water, wildlife, and woods. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Okay. I too would like to thank you again for having me here tonight. These issues are apparently very important to a lot of Minnesotans, or they would not have passed the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Act. They understand, Minnesotans understand how important this is. This isn't just something that we think is the right thing to do. It's something that we really have to do if we want to maintain things for our future and for our kids. And I appreciate what you do, because it takes a lot of patience even just to maintain your building and to have these meetings. And it's such a great location out here. But what you do and be passionate, the passion that you have for making sure that we take care of the land and these things that we know are so important. What I was saying before, we couldn't continue farming the land because there wasn't enough land for all of our families. And I think it's important for you to understand my position on it. As landowners, you have total responsibility for what happens on that land, but you have to be able to make a living too. So we all have a part in this, even if you don't own the land, the water. The water flows everywhere. There are no boundaries on water. It just flows and we drink it and it gets in our. So it's very, very important, and I know you know that because you're working hard on these issues. I would work very hard on these issues as well, because I understand that it's vital that we make sure that we do the things we need to do to take care of those things. And so I would pick up your vote on November 6th.
Thank you. Round of applause for those great answers. We have approximately 15 minutes left in this session, and this is a time where if you have a specific question of all of the people or a specific member who is running for office, this is your opportunity to say that. So while you're thinking about what you're going to ask, I have 3 reactions. And the first reaction was, I'm really glad to see several of you said that it's more important to prevent something from happening than to react to it and try and fix it after it happens. That's, I think, what we're about as well. One of you at least said that science-based policy regarding the environment and natural resources is important. It's not just opinions. It's science-based facts. And the third thing that I think each of you, especially in your summary, mentioned, you have a respect for the environment and for natural resources, whether you're directly involved as a farmer or you work with people who are landowners or have the ability to prevent water from flooding or prevent Asian carp from rising up the Mississippi and the Minnesota River to destroy our lakes and natural resources, to prevent fracking sand from being mined, to prevent wanton waste of our natural resources in northeastern Minnesota by copper nickel mining without proper safeguards. So those are my reactions, and I ask if any of you have questions or comments that you'd like to make as well. Come on, it's a chance.
I can't believe we did that well.
Well, one of the things that's happening here in the next couple of days, and I guess I'll make this announcement so it doesn't need to be made later again, is we had a class of field biology students, about 30 kids in here yesterday morning walking through the woods. Nelson and I did some history of what Auburn Woods was, and the teacher talked about succession and how an oak savanna naturally comes in oak savanna by fire running through it and by taking out invasive species such as buckthorn and black walnut trees and hackberry and other things which were not here 150 years ago before white people came into the area. That's going to happen again. So if you have any time this Tuesday morning at 8:10 and would like to help cut buckthorn, and this goes for everybody, that class will be back. So we're going to get our nippers out and our bow saws and some of the chemical that we use to spray the stumps, and we're going to make a great big pile, but we can't burn it yet because there's a burning ban. So maybe when there's a little snow on the ground, that burning ban will be lifted and we'll take care of some of the buckthorn.
And if you run out of buckthorn, I have some in my backyard too.
How big a backyard do you have?
Well, it's about 180 feet by 80.
Oh, that you can handle.
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson?
Gary, I heard you mention fracking, but I don't believe I heard either, any of the candidates talk about it or address or provide opinions on fracking,
Okay.
fracking sand.
Maybe give us a little background. What do you know about it and what's at your agenda?
I'm sorry?
Tell us what you know and what.
Not very much, I'm afraid, but I do know that there's a terrible controversy going. The people who have the sand, of course, want to sell it because that's money, but the people who live around there are obviously concerned about the loss of that particular real estate, just like the loss of pine forest to mining in northern Minnesota that creates a scar, it's ugly. And then, of course, there's a controversy of the process itself, allowing different gases and things to get into the water systems of those areas where the fracking is actually being done. And it's kind of a nebulous process right now. Nobody has a real finger on any part of that pulse, I guess.
Fracking is short for hydrofracking, and what's done is holes are drilled into the ground like wells would be, and then a special kind of silica sand, which is prominent along the Mississippi River from about Red Wing down to Dubuque. A very special sand because it's extremely even crystals. They're not shards, they're just the same crystal again and again and again and again, so it can be used. That is forced into the ground to push the natural gas to the wellhead, or in the western states, the oil. The problem with it is, it hasn't been regulated very well up until now. The National Izaak Walton League people and the people in Pennsylvania, when we had our convention there a couple of years ago, were really up in arms because it was destroying groundwater, it was destroying wells, it was polluting streams, because there were no safeguards being provided. There are some rules that have been passed since then by many states, but there's no national rules. The issue for Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa and Illinois is that in the process of removing this sand from its deposits along the river, almost all of that is hauled in trucks. And unless you cover these trucks, it's just like there's a dust storm right behind them. And they go down through the main streets because that's where the highways run. And in Winona, there was a car dealer that sued them so that they had to tarp all their loads because he had to go out in his used car lot twice a day to blow the sand off of his cars because it was coming off the things. Beyond that, it can be environmentally detrimental as well because it could change the way streams run and it could involve wells as well at the beginning of the process rather than the actual infusion of the sand into the ground. And that's what I know. So the question that you're asking is, if you're familiar with this and if you have any thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, we all have thoughts.
Okay.
Some of them are easier to come out than others. But you know, it boils back down to human involvement. You know, as humans, we are kind of like little ants, only ants have at least one single mind. Humans just do things all over, and so oftentimes it's for monetary gain or for some other reason or because of what we think we need versus what our wants are. And so we do things first and think later. And sometimes we need to do the opposite, and that is to think about what the consequences are first and actually know them rather than say, well, but I think it might be this one, and decide what's going on. I remember when I was going to college in my earlier life, when I was just out of high school back in the 70s, we were talking about groundwater, and I was going to ASU at the time. And we were concerned about that in Phoenix because that happens to be a desert area that is surrounded by rock all the way underneath it, and the only water it gets has to come in from the mountains and get into its groundwater. Most of the city at that time was being fed by groundwater wells, and they were lowering the water table 20 feet a year for the amount of water. And we thought that was bad until research showed that in Texas, the aquifer that most of the wells were used that fed the irrigation system had actually drawn seawater underground into that water aquifer 2 miles by that time already. Now that's a long ways to draw salt water in because it was creating such a negative impact in the water table. So there's an awful lot of impacts to mining procedure or drilling procedure. And yeah, I think everybody needs to be concerned about it. I don't know enough to know what kind of legislation there is at this point or what kind of is expected to happen, but it's something we do need to be watching.
Well, and I think any of these issues that we've been talking about, we have to get it right. We have to try to get it right because we can't afford to get it wrong. So people have to be patient and do the things that are necessary to make sure that we understand scientifically and procedurally and legislatively that we're doing the right thing for our water. Like I said, I would look at policy no matter what it is, as far as, what are they intending to do, and if it's just because people want to sell it, of course, there are local land rights there that you have to think about, property rights, you have to think about all of those things, but we have to be patient enough to make sure that we get it right.
And we're talking about mining the sand, taking it out and taking it to different places, like you said. And when this type of sand it's so fine, they have target trucks to get it there. The impact of when we remove something like that, it changes the landscape, it allows for slumping of the land, which causes erosion as it goes on, unless they're doing something environmentally to make sure that they safeguard the areas that they're taking the product from. And then when they take this sand, this frac sand, out to places like North Dakota where they're using it to mine, to get the oil out of the ground, because they're not running straight down shafts, they're running horizontal shafts and angle shafts, many miles, sometimes 2-3 miles into the ground to compress, using the sand to compress that and bring it out. And that also introduces the different gases that are polluting the groundwater in the substructure underneath North Dakota. And that it's not only North Dakota, but it spans up into Canada also, that area in that basin up there. So we're creating, by using those things to get the oil, which we do need, we understand that because we run on oil, but it also creates other problems with it. We need to take a long look at what the long-term repercussions of doing activities such as this, how they're going to impact us into the future. That I don't believe that's been done yet. We're just going to get it, we're going to take it. So we need to look at the long-term effects. We need to look at the studies. We need to develop policies to make sure that we're doing the right thing for us, preserve the things that we have.
If I could just follow up with some of the things that, as an examples of things that maybe are being done right. I don't know how many of you have ever been to the coal fields up in North Dakota. Have anybody been there? What they did was because of the glaciers that came down in the compression, coal was created there with such pressure that it made the coal. And they had a policy and procedure in which they stripped off the land to the point where they had to mark each, and I don't know what the level was, but they had to put them in piles so they could put it back on top of where they took the coal back at the same level. And what they found after doing this for 10, 20, 30 years is once they take the coal, which is usually anywhere from 10 to 20 feet deep, and then scraping monstrous machines taken out of it, once they took that out and they put the dirt back in, they didn't lose 1 foot of elevation because the soil that they brought up loosened up and it wasn't as compact from what the cold in the glacier did. And so when you looked at some of the spots that had already been mined, you couldn't tell that anything had come from there. Now that's one of the ways in which government and companies and others can work together to work in conjunction with nature as well. And some things we need to strive for. And I'm sure that didn't come about easy, and I'm sure it didn't come about quickly.
We have many of the same regulations in this county and many counties in southern Minnesota. When I served on the Planning and Zoning Commission for Steele County, I learned a lot about gravel pits. 5 minutes? Okay, we'll have time for one more question, so I'm going to briefly comment quickly. If you open a gravel mine, a gravel pit in Steele County, you must remove the overburden, stack it to the side, usually black dirt or clay or whatever. Then you can take out what you want to take out. You can only haul it certain times of the day on certain roads with restrictions on weight and whatever else. And then after you've emptied whatever you want to take out of this pit, you have to put the black dirt and the overburden back. You can see this in many parts of the county where mines were opened 20, 30, 40 years ago, and you can't tell they're there, because, as John said, the process works. Okay, last chance. If not, we're gonna cut it. If you want to, we got a couple minutes here. We'll reorganize for our membership meeting. If you want to talk to